This is CBC Vancouver News.
Every friend that I have in Israel was in a bomb shelter.
I believe that this is an attack both on the people of Israel as well as people of Iran.
Israelis and Iranians in BC fear for their loved ones after Iran fires ballistic missiles at Israel, and Israel vows to respond. Plus,
I want our expectations to go up.
Cut homelessness, hike social assistance, and provide free public transit. The BC Greens unveil some big platform promises, but how to pay for it.
This is what a more visionary policy platform could look like when you know you're not going to win the election.
And the Site C dam will soon come online, but will the mega project be able to meet BC's growing demand for electricity? Hello, I'm Michelle Ghoussoub. Thanks for joining us. Israel's prime minister says Iran made a big mistake by launching dozens of missiles into his country, further increasing the risk of an all-out regional war.
All done. Okay, guys, we got to get off the roof. These are coming down right next to us here. They're coming down. One just about. We got to go inside.
Ground-shaking explosions were felt in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Israel says its air defenses intercepted most of the missiles, but some did get through. It reports some injuries on the ground, but has not been specific. Iran says the vast majority of the missiles hit their targets. In a statement, Tehran cited the killings of 3 top militant leaders as a reason for the attack. The strikes come a day after Israel Defense Forces announced ground operations in southern Lebanon had begun. Israel says there will be a response. John Hernandez has more on the fear Israelis and Iranians in BC feel for their loved ones.
Every friend that I have in Israel was in a bomb shelter.
Vancouver Rabbi Dan Moskowitz has been wrestling with fear and worry, watching from afar as Iran launched missiles into Israel.
It made me feel guilty for being in the safety and security of here in Canada. It made me feel grateful for the IDF and the missile defense system that is keeping them safe.
Moskowitz, among local faith leaders, condemning the strike, which comes at the start of the Jewish High Holy Days and 1 year after the Hamas-led attacks on Israel.
Of course, we are thinking about it being almost a year exactly to October 7th and the most horrendous and deadly attack on the Jewish people since the Holocaust.
Iran's missile launch is in retaliation for Israel's campaign against Tehran's Hezbollah allies in Lebanon. While there have been no reported deaths from the missile strike, there are mounting concerns it could lead to further violence.
Many people that they are in Isfahan have been moved to different cities across Iran because they know that attack will imminent.
Vancouver Iranian refugees Behzad Muradabi and Yassi Bayani fear for their families back home as Israel has vowed to retaliate.
I believe that this is an attack both on the people of Israel as well as people of Iran, because we know that the war will start, and this is horrifying for me.
Retaliation that onlookers warn would only destabilize the region further.
They could retaliate really big times, and if they do, Iran will retaliate on much bigger scales.
Canadian officials say they unequivocally condemn the missile strike and are calling on both sides to avoid an all-out war.
We need to make sure that there's no escalation. Of course, Israel needs to be able to protect itself, and that's why we'll continue to support its security.
Calls for de-escalation echoed by members of Israeli and Iranian communities here in hopes of stopping any further violence. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
The BC Greens are the first party to unveil their full election platform, and it comes with some big promises, a pledge to hike social assistance rates and cut homelessness. But as Katie DeRosa reports, the party acknowledges it is not running a candidate in every riding.
And I'm so tired of our expectations being diminished with every election that goes by. I want our expectations to go up. We are releasing a platform that says to British Columbia, raise your expectations, expect better.
BC Green Party leader Sonia Furstenau is making some big promises. The party's platform includes a pledge to more than double social assistance and disability rates at a cost of $2 billion a year. The Greens also plan to provide housing to everyone living on the streets, make public transit free, and lower the voting age to 16. The Greens would also integrate mental health workers as a fourth option in 911 calls, beyond police, firefighters, or paramedics. The party would create a well-being framework as a way to measure whether government programs are making people's lives better. So how will the party pay for all of this? The BC Greens say they would pay for this plan by taxing the richest British Columbians, which would bring in another $5.5 billion a year. People earning $350,000 a year or more would be taxed at 22%, up from 20%. Companies with $1 billion in revenue would be taxed at 18%, and people who have properties worth $3 million or more would also face a tax increase. At least one economist is skeptical the Greens' financing plan will work.
This is what a more visionary policy platform could look like when you know you're not going to win the election.
Unlike the NDP and the BC Conservatives, the Greens are not running a full slate of candidates. Firstenow admits she's disappointed the party could only get 69 candidates, but says she's proud of those who are running. The NDP incumbent Firstenow is running against says the NDP government is already acting on some of the Greens' promises.
A well-being action plan for children and youth is something I committed to over the summer, and a BC Conservative government puts all of that at risk for children, for youth, for families.
But so instead of focusing on the Greens, you keep kind of mentioning BC Conservative. So is the message that a vote for the Greens is taking a vote away from the NDP and could prop up the Conservatives?
I think we need to recognize that the stakes at this election are high.
The Conservative candidate in Victoria Beacon Hill, Tim Thielman, declined to comment on the Greens' platform. Firstenow has encouraged voters to return a minority government, similar to 2017 when the Greens ended up with the balance of power.
Until we all start voting for what we want, we're going to keep getting the same outcomes. We're going to keep getting what we don't want. We're going to keep having to settle for less.
The Greens face a big fight in this election, with Firstenow running in an NDP stronghold and Green incumbent Adam Olsen not running again. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
NDP leader David Eby says his party is offering better job protection for those who get sick. He says people shouldn't have to worry about their employment when they're facing something like a cancer diagnosis.
We're announcing that we'll be expanding protected job leave. Your job will be protected for you. Currently, it's 8 days, which doesn't make any sense for that kind of major diagnosis. We're expanding it from 8 days to 27 weeks.
Eby says his government would also offer more health-related travel assistance for people in rural communities. He says his government would cover the cost of mileage to get treatment or see a specialist, and the patient would get that money up front. The BC Conservatives, meanwhile, say the government needs to be more realistic about our power requirements. Leader John Rustad argues basic energy needs aren't being met now, and it's time to look at nuclear power.
What does it mean? How do we do it? What do we do? How do we deal with this associated with, the seismic issues that we have in this province? Can this be done affordably? Can it be done reliably? Can it be done safely?
Rustad says if elected, he would scrap government mandates on electric cars and heat pumps. The climate and energy think tank Clean Energy Canada says small modular nuclear reactors may not be cost competitive for BC's grid in the future. North Shore mayors are pleading for more funding for public transit from the province. Without it, they say services will be cut drastically.
Imagine a future where the North Shore loses most of its bus routes. All of the bus service is shut down at 8 o'clock at night, and SkyTrain and Seabus services are suddenly reduced by 30%.
TransLink says it faces a pending structural deficit of $600 million a year. City of North Vancouver Mayor Linda Buchanan says no new funding has been committed by the province after 2025. The mayors are calling on parties to publish their plans for transit funding just before the mayors made their pitch. NDP candidates on the North Shore pledged a rapid bus service from Park Royal to Metrotown, separated from other traffic. And ahead of next Tuesday's TV debate, a draw has decided the order of the closing statements and which podiums the party leaders will stand at.
We will draw for the audience left podium. and I'm not looking. And that will go to the Conservatives.
The NDP leader will stand in the centre and the Green Party leader will appear on the right of your screen. The BC Greens will make the first closing statement, then the NDP, and finally the Conservatives. CBC News will host the leaders' debate on Tuesday, October 8th, starting at 6:30 p.m. Well, we've heard from the major parties, but what about you? We recently asked voters in the riding of Burnaby South Metrotown what their main concerns are.
Cost of living is too high in terms of the quality of standard of care, how much wages are in comparison to how much things cost. Things like that need to be addressed.
Finding a job in general, honestly, is really hard right now. I've been trying to for a while and, not much luck, honestly.
It's the drugs. Because more young people dying, overdose or whatever it is, more people live on the street.
Housing very important for the homeless. How can people live in the street? How? I don't understand that.
I'm deeply concerned about the direction that the environment is going. The deadliest natural disaster in Canada's history, deadliest climate-related disaster in Canada's history happened here in BC only a couple years ago, and I feel like everybody forgot the heat dome 2021.
In the Okanagan, the RCMP are investigating following a violent attack on a teen girl. As Brady Strachan reports, it happened Friday in a Kelowna park, and video of the incident has been circulating in that community.
The alleged attack happened at this lakeside park, Gyro Beach, on Friday evening in Kelowna.
No, just stand, keep the circle.
Now, video shared with CBC News by the victim's family shows a large group of people surrounding a girl. Everyone looks to be youth in the video. At one point, another female youth grabs the girl by the hair and takes her to the ground, then repeatedly punches her while she's lying on the ground. Another male youth appears to grab dirt and sand and throw it on the victim, who is lying motionless. Now, CBC News has spoken to the victim's father. He says his daughter is 13 years old. She suffered a concussion and multiple abrasions and bruises to her face and ribs.
My daughter tried calling for help and texting because I think she kind of sensed that there was something going on. And then as they swarmed her, they took her phone so she couldn't call for help anymore. And then that's when the beating started, and then they threw her phone back at her when she was laying there motionless after they were done dumping dirt on her head.
The RCMP say they're reviewing the video to try and identify people involved. And they say this was just one of several incidents on Friday night involving youth, some of them criminal and some of them assaults, that they're investigating. Now, police say the video has been shared on social media, and they're asking people to be sensitive about doxing or identifying youth who may be part of the investigation or victims. The incident also comes about 1 year after another altercation involving youth at a different park in Kelowna. A 15-year-old teen died following that incident when he was allegedly hit by a car. Now, police are asking anyone who witnessed this incident on Friday to contact them. Brady Strachan, CBC News, Kelowna.
A 35-year-old man has been found guilty on 2 counts of second-degree murder. Wade Cudmore from Naramata was one of 2 people accused of killing 2 brothers during a drug deal. The bodies of Eric and Carlos Fryer were found shot and stabbed close to where Cudmore lived. He testified he was there to buy $400,000 worth of carfentanil, cocaine, and crystal meth from the Fryers. And he told the BC Supreme Court his partner, Anthony Graham, was solely responsible for the murders. Graham is charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, but remains at large. An ongoing job action continues to affect several inland ferry routes. Sporadic outages are impacting 4 ferry routes in the interior, including the Adams Lake, Upper Arrow, Arrow Park, and the Needle services. Ferries will run for essential police and ambulance crossings and for people heading to school or going to a medical appointment. Travelers are urged to plan ahead. And still to come, Site C is set to start delivering electricity to BC customers in the coming months, but it'll likely be the last major dam in the province as climate change brings new challenges for supply. That's next. Welcome back. In the coming months, a mammoth hydroelectric dam in Fort St. John will start delivering much-needed electricity to customers. Site C is likely to be the last major dam in BC. We've long relied on water for affordable, renewable electricity, but as Lindsay Duncombe reports, that reality is changing.
It's huge.
Yeah, these are 10 meters in diameter.
Yeah.
The demand for electricity in British Columbia is growing so fast, even water flowing through these giant structures won't be enough. Construction manager Chris Waite spent 8.5 years working on this project.
This is a generational type project. It's a very, very large one.
This is Site C, likely the last major hydroelectric dam in British Columbia. It took a decade to build and cost $16 billion. Building dams creates flooding, destroying farmland and traditional territory. This project went forward after decades of opposition and an undisclosed settlement to the First Nation here. Big costs for much-needed power.
The whole push for electrification, which really means that we need more power on the system. And so Site C is coming on at absolutely the perfect time for that.
When Site C is fully online, it will increase BC's power generation by 8%. That's enough to power close to 500,000 homes, but it's not enough to keep up with increasing demand.
BC Hydro expects demand for electricity to grow 15% or more in the next 6 years due to a growing population, industrial expansion, electric vehicles, and even artificial intelligence.
AI is a huge energy hog, so we're expecting an incredible increase in demand, and Site C won't be anywhere near sufficient to cover that increase.
Andy Hira runs the Clean Energy Research Group at Simon Fraser University. He says another problem, climate change, can mean less water. Less water means less energy. Last year's drought meant BC had to import 20% of its power from neighboring provinces and states.
We don't really have good, reliable models about what the precipitation patterns are going to look like in 10 or 15 years.
Margareta Dovgall studies climate change and energy. She says it's possible BC and its neighbors could be hit by drought conditions at the same time.
At the very least, we are going to see price increases if the new capacity coming online can't meet the demand. Possible as well that we see things like brownouts.
BC Hydro says it plans for fluctuations and will announce new renewable projects later this year, according to CEO Chris O'Reilly.
We are confident that we have the resources here in British Columbia to meet the near-term requirements while planning and investing for growth down the road.
And this is the thing that spins around.
This spins at 72 RPM.
Site C is part of that plan.
This is our last one, unit number 6.
Once these final giant rotors are in place, it will begin to deliver power in December. It's expected to operate for more than 100 years, through whatever changes the next century brings. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Fort St. John.
This was sunset this evening from the Pacific Sands Resort in Tofino. Darius will have your full forecast next.
Hey, I'm Rohith Joseph. Vibin' is the new show all about discovering great new songs and fresh artists from across BC and beyond. Stream Vibin' on CBC Listen.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and this is your CBC Inbox.
CBC is the premier media partner of the 2024 Chutzpah Festival, November 1st to the 10th. The festival showcases international celebrations of dance, music, theater, comedy, and multimedia arts. For tickets, visit chutzpahfestival.com. And on November 7th, join CBC guest host Stephen Quinn at the 26th Annual Surrey Business Excellence Awards. For tickets, visit businessinsurrey.com.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
And Darius Maravi joins us now for a look at the forecast. October is here. What is in store for us?
It feels very much like fall, really, but we got a mix of everything this week. We got some dry weather, we got some sunshine, some cloud, and some rain. We had those showers today that have tapered off across most of the lower mainland by now, and as we continue to see that atmospheric moisture strip down to the south, the next wave doesn't arrive here until really for the lower mainland Friday, and for rest of maybe the North Island, Central Coast, probably not going to arrive until we get into probably late Thursday. But if we take a look here at the forecast map for precipitation, we can see exactly that. Again, you see that clearing as we get into overnight night. Sorry, we're starting into Wednesday, but here we go. That cloud moving back in for the morning, clearing up again as we get into the afternoon. So a little bit of cloud, but clearing back out. We have that moisture coming into parts of the island, but really we're fairly dry as we get into tomorrow. That cloud, again, clearing out as we get into Thursday morning, but then likely to build back in as we get later into Thursday. So expect a much cloudier afternoon there. Then that precipitation you can see starting to move in for parts of the North Island, starting to see that wave come down. So be ready for that. But most of that is going to be directed towards the north and central coast. Really, that's the story has been the story for about a week now, will continue to be the story, where all that energy is being directed up towards here. So we really only get the tail end of any moisture that's moving into the province. So again, here you can see that big wave of precipitation, most of that hitting the north and central coast, maybe a little bit coming to the North Island, but for the most part, we're fairly dry down here in Vancouver. Expect to see some showers, especially on Friday, but nothing too exciting. In terms of that wind, also likely to be a little bit windy on Friday, although I'm not sure this is going to take us quite there. If you're, for now, over the next couple of days, things are actually fairly calm, but if you're on the north shore, sorry, not the north shore, the north coast, expect to see a little bit of wind. If we take a look at our temperatures over the next few days, fairly seasonal, very chilly up in towards the north, but things are fairly seasonal across the province. Conditions tomorrow remain fairly showery in many places, but not likely to see those thunderstorms that we were seeing today in the central interior. And if we zoom into our 5-day forecast here in Vancouver, again, expect to see that clearing up at times in the afternoon tomorrow, especially clouding back in on Thursday, and then some rain on Friday.
All right, thanks, Darius.
Thank you.
And that is your late news for this Tuesday, October 1st. Thank you so much for spending your night here with CBC. For news at any hour, you can always go to our website, that's cbc.ca/bc. Have a great night.